This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with Joanna Barbolla. Now, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing fine. We're going to be talking about your new book, DIVULGE D'VINO. And I want to let people know that we are a sponsored podcast. People can listen to us on Newsly. You can see that scrolling below. There's that coupon code, so you can check that out. That we're a featured podcast on that platform. So that's an audio platform. If you use coupon code GHOST to get 1 month free, you can check that out. We also have a link for you that we got from Podmatch. So if people click that link, is that how they can get to your book?
Yeah, I mean, I have an author's page also on Amazon that they can get to my book that way, or they can do a search on Amazon.com, Divulge D'VINO. But I do have a website to my author's page where they can get to my book.
Okay. So is that the master link to get to that?
So it's just Amazon.com/author/divulge_D'VINO. That's my author's page.
That's fine. Okay. Yeah, if you send that to me through the private chat, I can add that as a link while we're talking.
Okay.
But,
sure. Okay.
Yeah, I want to let people. Yeah, I can. Yeah, so I can add that as another banner. So multitasking. But so you're a self-published author, artist, designer, corporate executive, and educator. You specialize in elementary education. But your book, Divulge D'VINO, did that just come out? Has that been out for a while?
Actually, it was. I just celebrated a 1-year anniversary. It came out October of last year. So I self-published it. I did the illustration. I did the editing, all on my own. So yeah, and it's my first book, so I'm real proud of it.
So your book is a concept of like art and wine. I read that you're into abstract art, and according to the write-up, you have a piece of your own abstract art within this book for like every chapter.
Yes, this is the book for all of those that are on audio visual. This is what the book looks like, and actually this is the front cover, and the back cover of the book is one of my paintings, and in each chapter will be another image of my painting. Each chapter has an image. So there are 16 wine reviews all together, and there's 16 different images of my art, as well as the front and back cover.
So in terms of that art, do you offer those pieces as posters or prints within your website?
I sell them on my Etsy website, which is under Art Reflections Design. I also have home products and accessories, which is under Threadless at Art Reflections Design. I sell weekend bags, yoga mats, phone cases, blankets, and I even have high heel shoes.
All right, so you got the Etsy.
Matching purses. So I've got the home products and accessories featuring my designs from my paintings.
Yeah, that's interesting because Etsy is a really good place for a lot of entrepreneurs who happen to be artists or artisans that can go and sell their unique pieces, and that's cool. That's within. So somebody could get introduced to you through your book, and then like, oh, I like this this print that's represented on the chapter, and then want a bigger piece, and then get introduced to your other stuff. So you end up having your brand. You kind of celebrate your brand through different aspects. You have your book, you have your prints, you have your Etsy. So it's a total picture of of an artist. We've always been really supportive of artists. That's the whole podcast was started in 2016.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Artists need so much support because there's so much beautiful art out there, and not everybody sees, what's out there because there's just so much to look at. But yeah, it's great to be able to showcase. I'm actually showcasing in a local art store here in Tampa a selection of my paintings that I'm showcasing. So it's great to be able to get my artwork out there. And then when I'm showcasing my art, I try to bring a couple of books in too, just, because it kind of goes together. The paintings go with the book goes with the wine, and it's all like a compilation of everything. Art, wine, paintings, home products, accessories, everything that features abstract designs.
Well, what made you kind of bring together abstract art and wine? Is there something you have always been interested in? You've wanted to connect?
Pretty much. I mean, I've always been a huge art enthusiast. I spent many years going to museums and galleries, and there's sometimes you go to openings. They're always serving wine when you go to different gallery openings, and it's just a way of enjoying the pleasures of life together, and it just kind of stuck with me. And I'm from New York. I'm a New Yorker. I'm only in Florida 2.5 years. And when I was in New York was when I did all of my paintings, which I brought with me. And I used to paint in my apartment. It was set up in the corner with an easel. And I used to do a lot of painting. And I used to also run a wine and art group, a networking group, which brought many people together, wine and art enthusiasts. I had about 200 members out of Long Island, New York. And we used to do a lot of different fun wine events, wine dinners, wine picnics, wine tastings. And one thing goes with the other. And it's just so much fun to enjoy both at the same time. It really is.
Yeah, it's that experience. Being an artist myself, I'm a music producer and a musician, and it's just kind of synergy. There's a synergy. I'm in my home studio with all my synthesizers and stuff, but the art kind of community is like we I've been in type of club scenes, and some of them are high end kind of art galleries, like in Boston, that would happen to do music. So and then they would be a synergy. Sometimes there would be like a wine tasting, and then some jazz band might be there playing some fusion, and there's like wine and hors d'oeuvres and just the art community, like the people who appreciate the art and the music and the jazz and the feel. So I have an affinity for it because it's the kind of circles you're in. If you're an artist, you know photographers, painters, actors, and it's just that kind of scene, and it's all kind of connected. So you found a way to connect the wine to the art directly in a book.
Exactly. And it's a wonderful way to bring people together, to bring like-minded people together, to enjoy something that is just, so enjoyable in so many different ways.
So maybe tell us a little bit deeper about the book, like in terms of like the full story, and when people experience your book, what do they, I guess they would take it and feel, what they get out of it. But what was your vision for people when they read this book?
And well, it's done in a really casual, witty, conversational tone. I want the reader to feel as if I'm right there with them talking about wine. I want them to feel like we're just having a conversation, we're drinking, we're trying different wines, we're talking about what goes with what, we're talking about tastings. It's just done in a very conversational tone. And like I said, it's not one of those snooty wine books. The premise of the book really is to try to find a really good bottle of red or white from $25 and under. So it's a kind of wine that the wines that I chose for this book are the kinds of wines that you can get at your local liquor store, at Total Wine or Stu Leonard's or any of those kind of stores. And get a good value for the wine that you're getting. Getting a good value and not spending $100, $75 on a wine that you're not going to even know that much about. So I really got into the flavors. Yeah, the flavors and you know what your palate tastes like, and the aftertaste, and what you're thinking, and what comes up in your taste buds, and then what you can pair it with. If you want to pair it with an entree, if you want to pair it with an appetizer, that kind of thing. So it's written for somebody who knows a little bit about wine, but is truly not a sommelier. You know what I mean? It's really just for the average person that likes to order a glass of wine or two, or maybe share a bottle with somebody when they're going out to dinner, and they might want some suggestions on pairings, and some suggestions on different grapes, and some suggestions on a good red wine that they don't know of, or a good white wine that they'd like to try. So it's a good table read.
So it's accessible, affordable, and it's not for like the total connoisseur, but it's not for somebody who's totally doesn't understand about wine at all.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely for someone who's a wine lover. Absolutely.
Yeah, somebody's a wine lover and says, you don't have to have $250, $500, $1,000 bottle to have an enjoyable experience.
Exactly.
And that's a good kind of introduction for some people. Like, I think to get into it for not trying to show off, because some people might be doing it for other reasons. Like, oh, I gotta have 500, I got 1,000, I got 2,000, 5,000. It's because they're trying to show, the value of the wine.
Exactly.
As part of the whole experience, rather than somebody that's like, I enjoy wine and I want to be able to try different ones without breaking a bank.
Exactly. There's no pretense to this. There's no pretense to this at all. This is just for the regular person who is true to themselves and wants to find value, but also wants to really get a nice bottle of wine. It's for the down-to-earth wine lover who just wants to learn more about wines.
So do you talk about it all? I was reading about how you do art therapy, and I think that's a really good place to kind of talk as a creative person, because I believe like every artist I've ever talked to, from a photographer to a painter to musicians to writers, a lot of times their act of creating their work is therapeutic, it's cathartic. And as a musician, when I write a piece of music, most of the time I'm working through some emotions, and I use that to create my work. Because I'm wondering, like, when you create your paintings, is it the same type of? I would think it's the same kind of intentions.
Is. Yeah, I would say music therapy and art therapy is very, very similar. It gives you a chance to just unload your creativity. And try to use it sometimes if you're going through different emotions, to use it as a coping method, to turn your feelings into art and creativity. It's really something that's great for anger reduction, stress reduction. And I know when I'm painting and I'm in my own zen, and I just know that if I look at the clock and 2 hours have gone by, it's like you don't even feel it, because you're enjoying yourself and you're so relaxed, and you're thinking about the colors and you're thinking about the shapes. And especially with abstract art, there's absolutely no rules. There's no painting in the lines. It's just whatever emotions are going to come out on that canvas. And then half the times the canvas has a mind of its own, and you could be painting something and then walk away from it, come back to it a half hour later, and it's just, wow, look what you've done, It speaks to you in so many different ways.
I've always had a parallel with painting in terms of like when I was getting into music, I was really into George Martin and the Beatles and Hendrix, and both of those people, or both of those groups of individual artists, talked about sound paintings. And being a producer, and I'm a synthesis of a piano player, a sound designer, I like to layer sounds. And the concept of sound painting is we can layer like tracks, like we can put down tracks like the way you put colors and they blend. Well, if we put down different sounds on top of each other, according to music theory, even whether it's theory or not, it starts to change. It starts like if you put different keys together, different chords together, different instruments together, and you layer them on top of each other, it starts to create like what what George Martin and Hendrix used to call sound paintings. And you know, the Beatles, their development was because like they saw that you could do more in the studio than you could do in reality. Like a live performance, you could only go so far with 4 people playing. But if you went and used the studio, you could layer. And once you started to layer, it started coming out like Monet. It's like a very, you know, you
Yeah.
get this idea,
Yeah.
you have this blend. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what type of form of painting do you do? Do you do oils or pastels? Or
So
what
yeah,
type
so
of,
because mostly I painted inside, I did use acrylic. However, I always wanted my paintings to have that consistency of a finished oil painting. So I would use a lot of different media that I would mix with the acrylic to get it to be that thick consistency. Sometimes different techniques I would use paste. I would use sometimes even spackle to get it really, really thick and to make it almost look like it was 3D. And I always used a palette knife. I never, ever use brushes. I always with a palette knife. And when you are using the palette knife and you're painting on a canvas and you've got a couple of different colors that are on your palette knife, and then you just move them around the canvas, it's unbelievable the beautiful, beautiful colors that will come out. It's just mind-boggling. I have my paintings all over my home here in Tampa, all over the walls, and you know, it's funny if I look at them in a different direction. If I'm lying down and I'm looking at a painting, I'll see different things that I will if I'm sitting down looking at the painting. So, yeah, it's just the paintings speak to me. They really do.
It's that flow state. I'm very much into a flow state type of structure. You know, as a musician, I can get really structured. I could go and create like a piece of work that has a defined structure and very clear, and I could write it for a bunch of people, and it could be a piece. Or I could be more like abstract, like fusion jazz or advanced bebop, and have a structure, but it kind of goes into the cacophony or goes off into a different zone of expression, and the piece evolves. And a lot of times what I like about like jazz is like you could have a set piece, but every time you play it, it evolves based on how you feel, how the audience feels, what the room feels like. So it changes. It's not a static thing. The structure of it changes based on what you're feeling. And you have this flow state where you're kind of into the muse. You're into
And then it feeds off the audience too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, you feed off. I wonder, as painters, have you ever had like a session where you do a live session with people around, or it's like always like private for you? Have you ever gotten
Well, for me,
like,
it's always been more of a private thing. I have done live painting, but I think for me, because I'm a private person, it takes it away from me, the feelings and the results of what I'm trying to go for. Because for me, it's very therapeutic, and it's a very personal thing for me because all of my emotions are coming out and they're going onto the canvas. So I like to do that in my own little sanctuary. But I know that there's a lot of artists that like to do live paintings, and I'm sure that's great for them, and I'm sure it works for them. But I'm a little different. I like my sanctuary. I like my privacy, and I like to be able to do my free thinking on my own.
Yeah, it's like whatever serves what you're working on. Like a lot of times, like sometimes I would do, work with other artists and come up with something as a group. And other times I want to just do it myself. So the whole thing I'll do it myself, and I'll just be in the studio with all my instruments, and I'll just be in the zone. And like you said, if I get in the zone, it could be like 5 hours, and I didn't
and you don't even realize it.
5 hours till I just got into it like a song.
Yeah.
It becomes its own world. Like when you get into a song and it comes to you, it's like it creates its own world, and it's like kind of its own vibe and its own structure and logic to the structure. And if things start to, it's almost like you found it, like I channel it, like it already was out there and I found it, and I found a way to frame it. But I'm like taking pieces from the universe and just putting it down. And that's very much what, as I got older, I trust myself more to
Yeah.
just put the tape on record and then let it happen what's ever going to happen. And then,
Hmm.
later I might layer and come back to it, layer and add and move it around. But a lot of times I do like to just experience that moment.
Yes, definitely. It's a very gratifying feeling when you're creating and you're using your own emotions and whatever however it's coming to you from the universe, as you said, and being able to just apply it to creativity. It's a very, very gratifying feeling, and I can certainly understand what you're saying.
I think art gets us out of the mundane, or it basically you can take things and make things special. So people live like their a kind of average life. You're going the 9 to 5 job, but if you're in, I wait. I do my day job, but I'm always very excited and very energized at the end of the day to go into my writing session, which I will
Hmm.
have writing sessions where I'll just do it. And it's not like I'm trying to force it. It's just like I feel like I need that space so that I can kind of let the energy of the day kind of shake it off. And I shake it off through my art. People might shake it off by going and exercise and going for a walk or I kind of shake it off by going into an artistic session and go through that.
Right, right. Yeah. That's it. It's a, like you said, like I said, it's a great stress reliever. Sometimes you want to let go of something. It helps you move your mind and move your thinking into a different place, into a healthier place, into a happier place. And it's just the great escape. For me, it's always been the great escape. That's what I call it.
You also talk about it being like an ultimate practice in well-being and like self-care. And I think
Hmm.
a lot of people maybe misunderstand art. They think it's like a luxury. They think it's like an elective. They don't understand. I think everybody can be creative, and maybe they can't be the greatest in a certain field, but everybody can show a unique human ability to be creative. And a
Hmm.
lot of times it's like imposter syndrome, or they just don't feel confident enough because they're always comparing to other things. But a lot of times, if you start getting into the fact that once you take paint to the page to the canvas, or you take a piano and you might not be the best piano player, but if you're passionate about doing it, you could write something very beautiful that nobody else ever wrote, right? Because it's you. And just like that's where people I think they spend too much time trying to compare with the other rather than understand there's a lot of beauty within.
Very true. Very true. It's and it's very individualistic. It's not something that there will never be two paintings that are alike. If I am even with abstract art, if I have so many paintings and I've used similar colors on similar paintings and I've used similar techniques on similar paintings, and there will never be two paintings that are alike. No, even if I actually sit there at my easel with a painting right next to me
Actively
and I
try to do it.
try to do the same thing, it will never come out the same. Never. So, and that's where all the originality comes in. It's just you're never going to make the same piece
Yes.
twice. Even if somebody says to you, "I want to commission you to make this painting again," I would say to them, "It's never going to come out the same way." Even if you want it,
Yeah.
if you
It's not
want it
going to
to
be
be
the exact
similar,
same.
maybe it'll be similar, but it's never going to come out the same way.
Is that the vulnerability and authenticity? Like why I try to like there's a lot of tools in my trade today where I can sample and I can totally replicate exactly what I did. So I could
Hmm.
actually go on stage with the exact composition, hit a button, and it will sound like what I originally wrote. However, to me, it's very boring to do that. Now, for some people who want to hear it the way I wrote it, that's fine. They want to hear it exactly the way I wrote it, but it's not fun for me as an artist. As an artist, I'd rather go and play that song and reinterpret it. And it
Hmm.
might get 90% of what it was. I could get pretty close to what I did. But it's not, like you said, every night I play it, it's going to be a little different. And I think to me, that's the point of like live playing, is to not replicate exactly what I wrote, but have a different experience for the audience, and why they want to hear it live is because it's
Right.
not the same. I don't
Variety
think,
is the spice of life. Who
yeah,
who wants always the same thing? Variety is the spice of life. You always want to hear something different, something new, something unique, something out of the ordinary.
yeah. I mean, I just think today there's so many tools where you can try to be perfect, and I've always been into what I call the happy accident. So the
Uh-huh.
happy accident, there's a lot of musicians, we talk about it, is where you didn't plan to do something and you don't edit it out,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
That you leave it because it took you into a totally different direction, and it actually became the special sauce that actually made the whole thing. There are a lot
Right.
of times in the history of recording, the happy accidents are very significant to almost all the big songs that we know in our life. Going back to
Mm-hmm.
the Beatles or Frank Sinatra, you go if you read the stories, because I'm a musical historian, about compositions. A lot of these compositions, it was the mistakes that actually made the
Mm-hmm.
recording. It's the thing that
Right.
didn't plan that
Right.
actually ends up making it what it
Uh-huh.
is.
Yeah, and you can say the exact same thing when it comes to a painting. Sometimes with abstract art, you can't erase. So you either have to leave it leave whatever you did, whatever brushstroke or
Yeah, what
whatever
it is.
gesture or whatever it was that you left on that painting. Either you work around it and you continue the flow, or you try and cover it up as best as you can. And a lot of the times you end up liking it. You end up liking what you did, even though it wasn't something that you were looking to do. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's very similar with painting.
yeah,
This happy accident that you're saying.
yeah. The happy accident is it's a dynamic that's actually starting to get more in vogue again, because there was a point of like perfection. And it
Mm-hmm.
started with the computers. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the computers in our industry have made it so we can go in and microsecond by microsecond control our composition to a degree we could never do before. The problem became is people got obsessive about correcting
Mm-hmm.
rather than letting it be. And because you can get into like the microsecond timing and shift things and actually change things or erase things, you can't erase it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of sometimes like our worst enemy, is going in because the system lets you erase it. Unlike if you're painting, you can't erase it, but
Right.
we can.
Right.
And then that kind of, to me, it kind of wrecks it.
Right, especially with acrylic. I mean, with oil, there's ways of getting around it. But once you have something on the canvas with acrylic, if you can't get a color strong enough to cover it, you are stuck with whatever you did.
Yeah,
And a lot of the times you can, like I said, go with the flow and work around it, or just leave it the way. I mean, that's abstract art. It's wherever the mind goes, and your palette knife will follow.
now on the palette knives, are there different types of knives for doing
Oh,
different
there's
types of
so many different
strokes, like
sizes
brushes?
and shapes, and I
Yeah.
have I have so many of them that I lay out on my table when I'm painting. So yeah, this you just need different shapes to get different effects, and it's nice to always be able to use different sizes so the painting doesn't look like it's all been,
One thing.
you don't want anything to look formatted. That's that's the
I think that's
worst
the
thing
rule.
you can do
One
with
rule.
abstract. You don't want anything formatted.
Yeah. Because there's so many tools today, people are using iPads and
Yeah.
all kinds of touch screens to do art.
Yeah,
And,
especially abstract art. They have all those new, yeah, but to me, that's not the joy of it. You're taking away all the joy and the celebration of sitting there with a canvas, smelling the paint,
touching it.
inhaling the paint, looking at the colors, getting the paint all over your hands, getting it on your clothes, getting it on the walls that are around, because sometimes you used a little too much force when you were using the palette knife. And yeah, I mean, to me, you're just ruining
you're
it
losing,
by sitting in front of a computer.
well, you're losing the sensory experience. It's kind of
Yeah.
like if you're playing a bass and then you go and do that bass on a computer. You've like if you've actually touched in a real bass guitar, there's
Right.
so many things you can do with the feel of those strings and the neck and all these different techniques with your fingers. Now, theoretically, you can replicate a lot of that stuff on a computer, but there's something different about actually physically playing that bass than actually going in putting it on a bar on a computer. Now, I can
Mm-hmm.
get to the same note, but the intentions of those notes, to me, the live, it's like a Stradivarius versus somebody trying to do it on the computer. Like, there's a way that Stradivarius is going to sound, and that's real.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get close to it with a lot of tech, but it's never going to be what that is. And so, if everybody's talking about AI replacing musicians, I'm like, you're never going to replace that human element of actually touching the instrument, like the way you're using the palettes.
Right.
I
And
just
it
don't
takes
think
the
they're
fun out of it too
replaceable.
for you. Doesn't
Yeah.
it take the fun out of
Yeah,
it
what's
for
the fun
you?
of it? Yeah, to me, it's
It's
not
not fun
fun
to sit in front of a
at
computer.
all.
To me, I mean, I spent 30 years in corporate America working as a high-level executive assistant back in New York City, and I sat at a computer for my entire day. That's what I did. And my outlet from that was being able to paint. I mean, living such a regimented life for so many years and then having this outlet of being able to create is just such a wonderful feeling. And I would never have
It's the
anything
freedom.
take that away from me.
The freedom, yeah.
I'm sorry?
When you're in the cubicle, you're in that box. Well, if you're in the cubicle in like corporate America, people are in a box or at the desk. There's a lot of structure there. The thing about when you're an
Exactly.
artist, you can kind of loosen the structure. And then what do we get today? We get people who are trying to put all the structure into art. It's like, okay, it's fine to have some structure. Classical has structure, right? Even jazz has structure. But there's
Mm-hmm.
something about having the freedom to blur the lines. Like when you can blur the lines and cross genre, it's like you're crossing like layers and you're doing things that are a little different. Changing timings, to change the movements, to change, in art music, I could cross, freeform fusion jazz with like psychedelia or or I could put some kind of Pink Floyd type of idea. Like I've taken Pink Floyd was really good at that because they would have sometimes a funk bass line with orchestral strings in the back. And so there's a lot of different mixing within progressive rock. I loved progressive rock because the idea is that you could have pieces that were 12 minutes long, have movements, have jazz influence, have rock influences, have,
Right. And didn't
blues
Queen do that
influence.
too? Didn't
Yeah.
Freddie
Yeah.
Mercury do that too? I mean,
Yeah.
that
Freddie
was one of
Mercury.
the,
He's
yeah,
mixing multiple forms. There's
yeah.
fusion, there's jazz, there's rock, there's
And
opera.
even opera,
Yeah.
remember? So
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
to me, that I love crossing,
Mm-hmm.
crossing genres. And everybody tries to tell you to stay in a lane.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even you learn in the canon. If you go to music, the theory is like you stay in the canon, you stay in this, you stay in that. The blues is this, you know, bebop is that. But the innovators are the ones that cross the lines, that start saying, well, why can't I break the rule? Why can't I change the timing? Why can't I
Mm-hmm.
change the structure? Then it becomes a different genre.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with crossing lines? There's nothing. We're human beings. We can invent things. We can change it.
Right. That's why we have free thinking, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
So the abstract art to me is a big integral part of like what I try to do, because I was really into Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. They used to work with Andy Warhol. And if you get back in those days, it's like the exploding inevitable was this, they used to have
Mm-hmm.
these happenings, and it was a mixture of art and poetry. It's like Lou Reed's doing poetry at
Uh-huh.
the same time. Andy's having his models and actors, and then putting things up on screens and doing this like performance art. And if anybody ever saw some of the films from that, there's like of what was done there. It's very experimental. I think Zappa did the same thing with the Mother's Invention in in San Francisco area, the same kind of
Mm-hmm.
idea. that you can mix art and music and performance art all at the same time.
Right, right. And that's exciting. That is so exciting to see. It really is.
Yeah, I see some people are trying to bring that back. You go to music festivals and you see artists, graphic artists and painters and filmmakers working with experimental bands and trying to come together with like a full performance. That's like,
Mm-hmm.
we adding dancers or adding actors and just doing something unique. That's like, okay, yeah, it's like a free form, but I think that's like the future of all art is like that cross. When you
Mm-hmm.
cross things together, you bring a painter with an actor, with a film director, with a musician, with the electronic guys, you get something new.
Yeah, you get something unique too. Something very unique that people aren't doing anymore. I wish there would be more performance art. I have to need to research to see if they have that here in Tampa, because that would be so much fun to see, so much fun to watch, and very inspirational too. Maybe it could give me an inspiration for my next painting. Who knows? I can get inspired very easily by just looking at different paintings and talking to different people. It just really gives me great ideas.
Yeah, because now, one of the things that's starting to happen is I was talking to somebody that created like a virtual performance space.
Mm-hmm.
And initially they were using it for stand-up comedians. So they created this virtual thing so stand-up comedians can go do virtual performances. And then the like actors started doing like one act plays on it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, other people like beat poets start reading poetry. And musicians come on and do shows. So it's like the idea is like you can create these kind of virtual art spaces because of the pandemic, and you can create new ways of thinking. My daughter went and created a virtual art gallery for disabled artists. So they could
Oh,
push their art
really?
into these virtual galleries. Yeah, she's in a collective that supports disabled artists to be able
How
to get their work.
wonderful.
Yeah, and it's
How
just like,
wonderful.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's cool that she had the ideas. Like, why not? Because these are people that are underserved and not getting a chance to be in the gallery. So why don't you, allow them to get past the gate and create a new gallery?
Uh-huh. Sure. And give them the same freedom that anybody else could have that doesn't have the disability. Let them live in the same kind of world, that a more healthier person lives in. Why can't they have the same thing? Why should they be left out in the cold? You
I'm
know?
trying to be expansive and inclusive, because I think art is the core of how we create. A lot of the things we have today, the Apple, with computer it was like it wasn't just like some business computer. It seemed like more artistic, and artists tend to go toward because it was different. So
Mm-hmm.
when you have artists get involved with things that are typically, well, that's just a bunch of engineers, so they don't need any art. It's like, well, Da Vinci was an artist and an engineer. It's like why not mix art? That's why you get a Ferrari, because that's art and design. Like, so sometimes art and design can be in the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look at architecture. That's all art and design, buildings and churches and
Yeah.
temples and all of those kind of things. I mean, it's just magnificent. The different architecture that's out there, especially when you visit foreign countries.
Oh
I've
yeah.
done a lot of traveling through. I'm Italian American, and I've been to Italy 5 times, and Sicily, and I've seen so many beautiful, beautiful architecture and churches and museums, and it's just breathtaking what you can see, and the art and the design that's inside of these buildings. It's just amazing. It really is unforgettable.
Yeah, I lived in Tokyo for 2 years, and what I loved
Really.
about Tokyo is you'd have the very modern architecture of
Uh-huh.
Japanese design, which is kind of like Swedish design, it's very clean. But then you'd have in the middle of all these modern designs, you'd have these temples, and like they have these things that were like going back thousands of years sitting in the middle of the city. And then like let's say you have this really old Japanese art and architecture in the middle of things that are modern. So it's a kind of dichotomy of all these things. And then within their culture, like the anime and the manga, you like give adults reading like graphic novels and watching cartoons. But these
Wow.
cartoons are like serious. They're not just for kids.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
cartoons
Adult
had a lot
cartoons.
of yeah, they had a lot of Shintoism in them. They had a lot of mysticism going back thousands of years, nine-tailed
Ooh.
foxes, all kinds of ideas that are spirit
Uh-huh.
animals, and it's really deep. Like
Oh,
you know,
wow.
so
That's
you
exciting.
yeah, so you'd see all this art and a kind of appreciation for art, and not thinking it's just for kids. You know,
Right.
but this having this kind of kind of childish kind of thing where like it's not childlike, you know, being in not you know, you didn't have to grow out of it, that you could actually still appreciate it as an adult. You didn't have to be told that's corny, that's you know, that you could still be into it, which I thought was
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. You can enjoy it as an adult. Absolutely. That's great. So tell me, how long have you been playing music? How long have you been a musician? Long
Since I
time,
was
huh?
17, I'm 56.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
interesting.
That's
A lot of my
fantastic.
friends stopped because well, people stop because they think it's for what reason did they do it? Like some of the guys I was with, you know, they wanted to be like the next big thing.
Hmm.
And if they didn't hit it, then they're like gave up. So the
Yeah.
guitar is like sitting in the closet. The main
Yeah.
thing is
Yeah.
I like to play piano. I like to play electric piano. I like to play synthesizers. I like to play bass and
Hmm.
clarinets. I like to play music. So to me, whether it was going to make money or not, I was always going to find a place to play because I like to play.
Hmm.
So if your goal is like, well, I'm doing this to get this, to get X, then if you don't get X, then you stop. That wasn't my thing. My thing was like, I do the art because I like the art.
Hmm.
And if somebody
Right.
happens to like it, that's cool.
Yeah.
But I was
Yeah.
still going to play it anyway.
Right. And that's very similar to me. I mean, a lot of artists say, well, I can't sell this, I can't sell that, I'm giving up, I'm frustrated. For me, it was just to make me feel good. If I wasn't selling a painting, didn't even matter to me. I mean, I have paintings that are not sellable. There's just too much of a history behind the painting that I would never let it
Mhm.
go, you know? And I've been painting. I started painting later in life. I started painting. I'm close to your age, and I started painting in my early 40s. So probably I would say 15 years or so I've been painting. But the painting started then, but my enthusiasm for art started from,
Before.
like probably my first year of college. I was always into art. Even in high school, I was always into art. So that's something that's been with me forever.
What
Yeah.
made you feel like you could start doing it yourself? Because sometimes, a lot of times, I was around people that they had the capability, but they really didn't believe it until a certain
Yeah.
point. Then they finally got
Yeah.
to it. Like,
It's
they
a
kind of
strange,
like you didn't.
it's the strangest thing, Phantom. It's the strangest thing. I took a paint and sip class, I think probably when I was 40 or maybe 41. I took a painting sip class and I loved it so much. Then I said, you know what? I had a couple of days off from work and I said, I'm going to go to the art league, the local art league in New York, and I'm going to take some classes back to back and maybe do a little more painting and do a little more sipping. And then I got so into it. I really enjoyed it. And, when you ask the question, is there a class for abstract art? They kind of look at you and scratch their head and they say, well, there's really no classes for abstract art. But I didn't even know, I was getting into it and I was learning about it. And I just said, well, if I'm going to go to a paint and sip class, why can't I paint and sip at home? And
Yeah.
that's what I did. So I would get my wine, I would get my cheese platter, I would get my crackers, and I would set up my easel and I started painting. I just kept doing it more and more because it felt good. And every time it felt good, I kept doing it more and more. And That's how it happened. And it's the strangest thing. Like I said, there is nobody in my family that has any ounce of creativity in them whatsoever. I come from the most conservative family in the history of the world. No one is
No,
creative.
they are.
No musicians, no artists, nothing like that.
Wow.
And I guess I'm the rebel of the family. So yeah. And I never really got a lot of support from them because they're not into art, but I have my supporters out there that I love. Yeah, I have lots of supporters out there. Not family, but supporters out there.
I talk to a lot of artists, that a lot of times, sometimes the family isn't for it because it's looked at like, well, that's not going to really make you secure. Right, because people say, well, if you get into that too much, you're not going to be secure. You're going to be a starving artist. You're going to be out there. And you're not going to have stability.
Yeah.
But like the way I look at it is like, art kind of saves me. It feeds my soul. Like a lot of people, pure artists will say, the art act of creation, it actually heals me. It makes me feel better.
Nourishing for me. It's very nourishing for me. Yeah. And for me, I did it as an adult. So I had already, I already had a career and worked in my career for years before I started to do this kind of side hustle where I started getting into painting and then doing the wine group and then starting the wine blog. And actually DIVULGE D'VINO comes from a wine blog that I started for my members when I was running my wine and art networking group.
So that must have been really good in New York. Because New York kind of, I actually used to play in New York. I used to go and do shows in New York back in 2017. And I just love that New York City is just an art, like LA, is an art city too for different reasons. But when you get into certain areas like that, then it's like art is supported. There are tons of places you can play as a new artist. You can get, if you're willing to go on stage, you can get on stage. You can get and perform.
And there's always good energy for that. A lot of, very, very good energy for that in New York because the energy in New York is nonstop. So yeah, I could see how you would love to perform there.
Yeah, it's just cool to be around like-minded artists or people who are fans of artists because they get the support of people who are into the arts, want to look at the paintings, want to listen to the music, want to go watch the people off Broadway. It's just that kind of thing. It's like, art is good. It's nothing wrong with expression. Where some people were like, well, that's that. Well, you don't do that. But but it is something freeing about being able to express what's inside and bring it out. And some people get scared of that. I've run into artists that are scared of the vulnerability of what they present because then they get scared of the hater because the hater comes back and says they don't like it.
Yeah. Well, there's haters. There's always haters out there. There's always going to be jealousy and there's always going to be haters and there's always going to be people that are going to want to see you fail. And that to me is just white noise. That's all that is because you just have to do what's going to make you happy and what's going to nourish your own soul. That's the most important thing about life, and about being happy, I think.
Well, we have, the cool thing about the net, there's a lot of things that aren't so great, but the great thing I found is that the way that I can kind of take my work and kind of throw it at the wall and get it out. And then if you come to find I have fans like in multiple countries all over the place that get into what I do. So like in the old world, it's like I have to go to the bar and play in the bar or go as far as I can drive and make it and get to a place. And now I can actually present, you got people, in the Middle East listening to my stuff or people, in the Netherlands to connect with me. It's like I've run into, I've had people from Australia and Africa and Japan and Korea.
Wonderful.
And it's just because if you can put it, if you show up and you put it out onto the web, you'd be surprised at the kind of feedback you get. And sometimes, like if you never take that piece, you never show it to anybody, well, no one's going to know about it. So
You have
sometimes
to
it's like
share it with the world.
you have to share your work.
Share your art with the world. Share your work with the world, or else no one will ever know. You're absolutely right.
And that's a
Yes.
hard thing for some people. That's the
It is.
big moving point where people find that crucible moment. Like, when did they decide that, like, I'm going to be a life coach and I'm going to come out and give my experience? I'm going to be that creator. I'm going to be the author. I'm going to go out on stage and speak my wisdom. But you got to have that belief in yourself, and it's not arrogance to
No,
show up
it's
on the stage
courage. I would say it's
and put it
courage
out
more
there.
than anything. It's having your own personal courage to be able to do that for yourself. Confidence and courage.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people get tripped up on. I think they think it's
Mhm.
like, well, they've got a lot of gall to be going out there and doing that. It's like, well, like, now you can talk about what somebody else is doing, or you could go do something yourself.
Exactly. I think it's more fun to do it yourself than to watch somebody else do it.
Yeah, like, I've always been is like, well, why not? Because that's the thing is like, yeah, of course, there's always going to be somebody who could play an instrument technically better than you most of the time, unless you're like Hendrix or something. Like, then
Right.
you run on, you're like, oh, well, there's not a lot of people can match you. But it's how you play it. It's how you go on to your instrument and what you give the world. So it's what people realize, when they find somebody, they do an unplugged performance and they don't have all the artifice, and it just becomes like their voice in a microphone, and it feels very vulnerable, very clear, and it's perfect. That, to me, you don't have to have all the other stuff. Sometimes you can come out with a very kind of in a not heavy presence with all these tools to kind of build yourself up, and you just show who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
what the world usually wants is like, who are you? If you show them who you are, then that
Mm-hmm.
usually can work.
Yeah. And it's a very freeing feeling to be able to do that. It really is. For me, it's always been very freeing to be able to share my art with the world and put it on my Twitter page and put it on my Instagram page and put it on my Facebook page and put it on my LinkedIn page, and just share it with the world. If they don't buy it, that's okay. They don't have to buy it. I'm sharing my work with the world, and it's something that I'm proud of. And
Well, I think
and
it just
I did
helps.
it for me. I didn't do it for the sale. I did it for me. It'd
Well,
be
it
great if I
inspires
could
other people.
sell. Don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah,
did it
yeah.
more for me than anything else.
Well, you get opportunities. Like, I was telling somebody sometimes, like, sometimes people's like, oh, you got to get 1 million views, right?
Mm-hmm.
One time I had a post, maybe got 30 views, but one of the views was from a Grammy Award winning producer.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came and they got on my podcast, and I got to talk to them.
There
And
you
I didn't
go.
pay an agent. I didn't pay anything. It's like just
Uh-huh.
putting my work out there. And it wasn't the
Uh-huh.
quantity of views, it was the person who saw it. And this
It
is why I
just
try to
takes
tell people,
one.
like, just
It
because
just takes one.
you think yeah, one person could actually
That's
change
it.
your thing. And the number doesn't represent the possibility. I've
It's
gotten
not
to work,
quantity, it's quality.
yeah, on all kinds of projects from the right person finding
Mm-hmm.
me and hearing
Yeah,
or seeing what I did, and then connecting
that's fantastic.
with like-minded people. Yeah, I think this is where the opportunity of people saying, well, you're failing if you're not getting this number. Like, if you look at your Rolodex of how many people you connect with, that's
Mm-hmm.
the value. If I look at that, I've done over 1,000 podcasts. I think that's 1,000 hours of talking to other humans. To me, that's
Mm-hmm.
like a master class for 1,000 hours. I've gotten all this knowledge that was like taking master's degree in humanity, talking to other people. That
Yeah.
builds up my capability because I learn every day from everybody I talk to. So I don't got to get paid for that.
Right. Right.
Normally you'd be paying for it.
And it feeds your spirit along with that. It gives you life lessons and it feeds your spirit.
Yeah. So I think this book that you come together with, DIVULGE D'VINO, is a really interesting concept. of combining like art with wine, tasting and understanding, for
Mm-hmm.
somebody that can actually realistically check out a lot of different wines and a lot of different, taste that they are
Mm-hmm.
not beyond their budget, which is I think that's a
Exactly.
really inviting concept that is like, oh, this is doable. This isn't
Mm-hmm.
like something I'm watching like on some TV channel in Beverly
Right.
Hills and I can't get there. I can't get to that
Exactly.
five-star restaurant.
Exactly. I wanted the book to reflect who I am. I'm a very down to earth regular woman, and I wanted the book to speak to that, and I wanted the book to be able to say, "Hey, you don't have to be a sommelier and spend $150 for a fabulous Chardonnay when you can get one for $25 and enjoy the oakiness of it and the flavor of it and the finish of it and
Mhm.
all that great stuff that comes with wine tasting."
So you still have all the attributes that really some people would think it has to cost money. Not everything in this world costs money.
No,
Sometimes things are very experiential. You can experience something, and the value doesn't represent the what it costs doesn't represent its value.
right, right.
And
And what do
so
they say? The best things in
that's what
life are
people
free,
sometimes forget.
right? The best things in life are free.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you
And,
find a lot of things that just to taking the time, you go to the
mhm,
library, you can learn a lot of things that you could be paying somebody $600 for a program, and you could go to the library and get that book, and you could probably get a lot of things out of that if you took the
mhm.
time to read it.
It's true. And
So
everything is
there's
on.
some,
And if you want to teach yourself something if you want to teach yourself something, instead of taking a class, you could go on YouTube, because there's how many how to YouTube videos out there. It doesn't
yeah.
matter what it is. It's on YouTube. It's amazing.
Well, yeah, it's like when I first started getting in my synthesizers, and I just said, well, if I own that thing, then I'll figure out how it works. And as
Mhm.
when I was like 16, 17, I went and got my modes, the analog modulars and, one of these classic 1970s type of things. I got it. And because I owned it, I wasn't scared to play with it. And so then I by having it that I'm allowed to touch it because it's mine, then I can figure out how it works. And I
Mhm.
just, it's just sometimes I've run into guys like bass players, like they wanted to play bass, they didn't know how to play bass. They just went to the Guitar Center, they grabbed a bass when they were like 16, and they kept on playing it until they got to do it. They just taught themselves, listening to
Mhm.
records. This is before YouTube. They would just like listen to a record, start playing with it until they figured it out. And then
Yeah.
eventually that's like just doing it yourself and having the passion to do that, to sit there and listen to that record and find the notes. And then eventually start to learn the instrument and then feel comfortable with it because it's your instrument. I think that's what happens when people get passionate about something. They get to drive, they go find that piano, they learn how to play without even a lesson. They just because they want to do it. And so
Right.
it just becomes the passion actually gets, self actualized.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. It's all about passion. Makes the world
Well,
go round.
well, I want to thank you again for being on the show. It always goes by quicker than we ever think. But
I know. I
yeah, we
can't believe it's in an hour already. Wow.
yes, it's the way it goes. But it's been great, a great conversation.
Fantastic. It was so nice getting to
I
know
think
you.
your book looks really interesting. I want to encourage everybody to check it out. Well, thank you. Yeah, I
Thank
want everybody
you.
to make sure they click on the link and check out your book on Amazon, and you can go out and check it out, DIVULGE D'VINO. And yeah, thank you for being a guest on the Fan Electric Ghost show. We appreciate it, and we want our fans, your fans and the audience, to check out the links. Check out the podcast wherever they like to watch podcasts or listen. We're going to be on all the podcast platforms by tomorrow. We were on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, but we'll be on all the major platforms like Apple and Spotify and iHeartRadio and places like that by tomorrow.
Wonderful.
But thank you.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
You too.